On a rainy spring night in 2024, deputies from the Scott County Sheriff's Office responded to what seemed like a routine car crash just 7 miles north of downtown Davenport, Iowa. A car had hit a pole. Luckily, no one was hurt. At first, it looked like another DUI case, but as the driver began sobering up, he started talking, and what he said left deputies stunned. Today's case brings us to Iowa, to a night that started with a crash and ended with the discovery of a gruesome crime in a quiet apartment complex. What really happened behind those walls may never be fully known, but the clues the suspect gave away helped detectives piece together a horrifying story. Let's get into it. At 1:47 a.m. on March 13, 2024, Lieutenant Thomas Leonard responded to a crash near Davenport Municipal Airport. A caller had reported that a silver Impala hit a concrete median, then slammed into a light pole. When Leonard arrived, the driver was slowly waking up. He didn't seem badly hurt, but he was clearly out of it. The smell of alcohol was strong, both from the man and the car.
Look at me. Are you alright?
Yeah.
You're in an accident. Do you know that?
No.
Where were you heading to? Do you know where you're at all or anything?
Yeah, I was on the auditorium.
Wait, where were you heading, you think?
The auditorium.
The auditorium?
Yeah.
What's your name?
Chris Ian.
Chris Ian?
Chris Levy.
Oh, okay.
The driver was 31-year-old Christopher Beehall, a local resident. He couldn't say where he was or even how he got there. At one point, he claimed he was at a hospital.
Alright. But you say you don't remember where you were coming from?
Nope.
Not at all?
Nope.
Girlfriend's house, your house, anybody's house?
Not really sure.
Okay. So do you know where you're at right now?
Hospital, I'm pretty sure.
Your hospital is where you're thinking at?
Yes, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
You're over by the airport.
Oh, okay.
Do you know how you got there?
Nope.
No? Okay.
As the lieutenant checked the car for anything suspicious, he found something unusual. There were no bottles, no drugs, but near Chris's bare feet was a knife.
So where are you bleeding at down here? Your foot's all got blood on it. Where's your shoes at? Do you know where your shoes are at?
No.
Okay. Did you just jump in the vehicle from...
Yeah.
Where'd you leave from then?
Not sure.
Not sure? Alright. When you get... why is there's a knife down by your foot, so I want to make sure I move that, okay?
It was storming, heavy rain and fierce wind. Lieutenant Leonard pulled the knife from the car and placed it on top of the vehicle. As the rain hit the blade, blood started washing off. Chris had a small cut on his side, but nothing serious. Deputies figured it was likely an accident. At that point, there wasn't much concern. The Impala was registered to Chris, and everything seemed to check out. But when they looked up his address at the Crestview Apartments in Parkview, things changed. Chris lived with his girlfriend, 31-year-old Taylor Escontrias. Deputies went to the apartment and knocked on the door. No one answered. Back at the apartment, everything seemed quiet. Deputies knocked, but no one answered. Taylor's phone went straight to voicemail. From the outside, there was nothing unusual. No lights, no noise, nothing that raised alarm. So Deputy Turner didn't force entry. Instead, he drove back to Davenport, where Chris was being treated for minor cuts and extreme alcohol intoxication. At the hospital, Chris was read his rights. Deputies also ran a sobriety test, specifically a vertical gaze nystagmus, or VGN test. It checks for jerky eye movements as the person follows an object moving vertically without moving their head.
Just keep your head still and look straight at my finger, okay? You think that's about a foot away from your face? Give or take a couple inches.
At first, Chris had trouble keeping his head still.
Keep your head still for me.
But when he managed to follow instructions, the test confirmed signs of heavy intoxication. A blood test later showed a shocking result, a BAC of 0.3. The legal limit is 0.08. Doctors found no serious injuries, no concussion, no head trauma. Chris was simply drunk and slightly low on potassium. As the alcohol started to wear off, his speech improved. His memory, however, was still fuzzy.
So there was a knife. I know you just... Sorry, I'm getting... My ears getting...
There was a knife, and I don't really know how it got in the car, but like I know there was a reason why it was in the car.
Yeah.
When asked about the knife, Chris began asking his own questions. Was there blood on his hands when they found him? Had anyone checked on Taylor? He said she likely wouldn't answer in the middle of the night, but suddenly he grew anxious. He insisted that deputies go back to the apartment. He needed to know, was she alive?
Okay, that's why I really need to ask you. I need to make sure she's alive.
We went there and knocked and she didn't answer. We know the door code and everything. Thank you.
But
what makes you concerned that she's not?
I don't know.
Okay.
Something in my mind me feel like I did something. I don't think I would have ever done anything like that to her. Because I'm not like that.
Were you guys having a fight earlier today?
No.
Okay.
But
Is it just kind of some thoughts you're having just because we know she didn't answer yet?
I'm really fucking scared that I have these pictures in my head that, like, I beat her with a baseball bat.
Okay.
And, like, I know that's incriminating myself, but...
Well, at this point, it's for the safety of everyone involved.
I need to make sure that she's okay.
Nope, I can send another deputy up there to see if we can go check for her, okay? Let me get a hold of my boss and just have him go up there and check on her. I'm sure she's okay.
You good? What's going on?
He might have killed his girlfriend. I don't know yet.
What do you mean? What?
He just told me he said, I need to know if she's alive. I said, what are you talking about? We just tried to go knock. He gave me his address and the door code. Hang on. He said he gave me the address and the door code, and he said images are going through my head of me beating her to death with a baseball bat.
Lieutenant Leonard met the deputy back at Crestview Apartments. This time they didn't just knock. They tried the door to Unit 4. It was unlocked, but something was blocking it from the inside. That something was Taylor. Right behind the door, they found the young mother. She was gone, the victim of a brutal and chaotic attack inside her own home. She had suffered nearly 60 injuries, inflicted with a bat, a knife, and a screwdriver. The scene stretched across the entire two-bedroom apartment, the hallway, the kitchen, the living room, and finally the doorway where she was found. A bloodied baseball bat lay on the couch. In the kitchen, officers found the tip of a broken screwdriver by the sink. And the knife, the one found in Chris's car? DNA testing later confirmed it had Taylor's blood on the blade, despite the rain that had started to wash it away. Taylor Escontrias was just 31 years old. She was the daughter of Michael McKee and Lisa Rosenberg. Born and raised in Davenport, she had gone to Rockridge High School. She was a mother to 2 children, Lila and Julian. Taylor was known for her kind heart, her bright sense of humor, and her artistic soul. Her mother remembered her as amazing, spunky, unique. Taylor loved to laugh. She was honest, funny, and full of life. She had a passion for cooking and treasured every moment with family and friends. Unfortunately, Taylor's life had been marked by more than just kindness and creativity. She had also struggled with addiction throughout her adult years. It was during one of her recovery efforts that she met Christopher Beehall, a sometimes employed machine operator, also from Davenport. They met at Country Oaks, a rehab facility in Buffalo, Iowa, while attending treatment for alcohol addiction. Over time, their friendship grew. By October 2023, they had announced they were officially a couple and had moved in together. But just one day after completing their program at Country Oaks, both Chris and Taylor relapsed. They began drinking again. When detectives searched the Crestview apartment after Taylor's death, they found only scattered clues pointing to what might have led up to the violent attack. Most of the home, especially the back rooms, appeared untouched. A spare room held storage bins and totes. 2 closets in the bedroom were mostly empty. Some personal items sat on nightstands, and a bag was found on the floor. There were no signs of cleanup in the bathroom, but in the bedroom, detectives noticed a gallon bottle of Hawkeye vodka, empty, sitting next to a pillow. The cap was on the bed along with a cell phone. It belonged to Chris. Taylor's phone was later found in the kitchen, and on that tragic night, she had reached out to 2 friends for help using Facebook Messenger. One of them was Michael Bolin. Taylor asked if he could come pick her up. It wasn't the first time he'd done so. Michael spoke to her directly that night and said she sounded emotional and likely drunk. He had also been drinking, so he didn't want to drive. He tried to send her an Uber, but the fare to his home was over $150, way too expensive. Michael told her he'd come get her in the morning instead, but Taylor never called him back to confirm. He wouldn't hear from her again. Later that day, he found out she was gone. Taylor had messaged one other person that night, a former high school classmate named Nick Seaman. It was after 11 p.m. when Taylor sent a chilling message to her old classmate, Nick Seaman. He didn't see it until around 7 the next morning. Her words were haunting. "If I get killed, it was Chris. Don't reply right now, he's nuts." Despite this terrifying warning, Taylor never called 911. Later that day, Christopher Beehall was arrested at the hospital. After being processed, he was brought in for questioning. By then, he was sober and agreed to speak without a lawyer present. What followed were hours of fragmented stories. Chris gave 2 different versions of what happened that night. In the first, he claimed they were playing a card game called Garbage when Taylor had what he described as an emotional breakdown. He said he helped calm her down and the 2 laid in bed to talk. From there, he claimed his memory went blank until the attack near the doorway with the baseball bat.
And then we both kind of laid down. And then she started freaking out again. And And she went into the kitchen, grabbed a knife, came in the bedroom. I don't know what she was doing with it at first, and she was just kind of freaking out. I tried to take it from her, and then she ran out of the kids' living room. And I don't know how much of this next part is true or false, but I remember grabbing the baseball bat and hitting her with it. Okay, I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know what happened from the time that we went to bed to the time that I hit her with the baseball bat. We came inside and we were talking. Right down, we were still talking. And the next thing I remember is hitting her with a baseball bat. All I know is I think I was debating about just going and laying down or grabbing my keys and leaving. So I must have grabbed my keys and left, and that's the last thing I remember before waking up in the hospital.
He said he couldn't remember what started the violence, but he admitted the relationship had problems and said Taylor often made him feel like shit.
And she always kind of made it seem like I wasn't a part of this relationship. And she had said earlier that day that it's a one-sided relationship. And she always talks shit and, you know, makes me feel like shit. But I loved her, you know, so I just was trying to work on things with her.
Detectives took a break and left Chris alone, reviewing the details he had given, but none of it matched the scene. The evidence showed the attack had started in the kitchen or hallway and moved throughout the apartment, not just the doorway.
Been drinking has ruined my entire life. Why would I ever fucking kill her? Obviously because of the alcohol. But why? Like, literally, why? We drank, I don't know how many times before, never done it. Why now? Why would I do this?
When detectives came back, they pressed him to explain more. That's when Chris began to guess. He said maybe he stabbed her to put her out of her misery after the initial assault went too far. It was speculation. His memories of that night were scattered and hazy. He said he remembered almost nothing between lying in bed and waking up in the CIO hospital.
Have you remembered anything else while you've been sitting here? I wish I could. I don't know what the fuck happened, why it happened. To believe everything that you said. There's just still a couple of things that aren't really lining up. So there's multiple stab wounds that are not just the same. Okay. Is there any reason that there would be any blood on anything else other than a knife? In the baseball bat. A knife in the baseball bat. Other than that, I have no idea. I have no reason to believe there would be, but I couldn't tell you because I have no idea. How about a screwdriver? I mean, I'm sure it's possible, but I couldn't tell you. I honestly don't remember anything about a screwdriver.
Chris Beehall was later charged with first-degree murder, a charge that meant the state had to prove he acted with intent and premeditation. His defense didn't deny that he killed Taylor. The medical examiner confirmed that any one of the nearly 60 injuries could have been fatal, but couldn't say exactly which one was the final blow. Chris's attorneys argued that he was blackout drunk and too impaired to form the intent required for a first-degree murder conviction, but it would be up to the jury to decide if this was a drunken tragedy or a deliberate act of violence. In a surprising and frankly unusual move, public defender Leanne Striegel opened her case with a story about Tina Turner. She told jurors how Tina once skipped her own mother's funeral. It wasn't out of disrespect or a lack of love, quite the opposite. The point of this strange analogy, that intentions can be misunderstood, that actions don't always reflect simple motives.
One of the state's requirements is to prove the intention of Mr. Beehall. Intention is very difficult to prove. Getting inside this mind of somebody. Just like getting inside of the mind of Tina Turner and why she would choose not to go to her mother's funeral.
and that proving intent, especially in moments of emotional chaos, is never straightforward. Striegel argued there was no evidence Chris planned the murder, no cover-up, no attempt to hide what had happened. And even if Chris couldn't remember what he'd done, memory loss doesn't protect someone from being found guilty. Still, the prosecution pointed out something critical. Taylor wasn't just attacked once. She was injured nearly 60 times. Each of those blows, they argued, was a choice. The use of 3 separate weapons, a bat, a knife, and a screwdriver, showed Chris had paused, switched tools, and continued. All of the weapons came from inside the apartment, but he had to pick each one up at least twice. And the crime scene itself? It told a story of its own. The assault didn't stay in one place. It moved from the hallway to the kitchen to the living room and finally the front door. That kind of movement, the state argued, required thought, intent, and after the violence ended, Chris didn't call for help. He left. That, too, showed presence of mind and awareness of guilt. Dr. Dennis Klein, the medical examiner, testified that Taylor died from multiple blunt force injuries, but even he couldn't say which blow was the fatal one. The state focused on the knife wounds near the end, the ones Chris guessed may have come last near the door, but the defense raised a different possibility. Some of Taylor's injuries, the doctor admitted, could have come from a fall, and her blood alcohol level, a staggering 0.338, more than 4 times the legal limit. At that level, she would have been physically unstable, disoriented, and possibly unable to defend herself. So the defense argued, if one initial blow caused her death, then the dozens that followed were legally irrelevant. And intent, the key to first-degree murder, couldn't be proven through actions taken after she was already gone. Then, in a risky but bold move, Chris took the stand. It was his only real shot to paint the murder as a crime of passion, not one of planning or forethought. When Christopher Beehall took the stand in his own defense, he changed his story once again. Under oath, he no longer remembered using the knife. That same knife, the one he had earlier speculated he used to end Taylor's life at the doorway, was now gone from his memory. A detail that had once seemed central, now conveniently forgotten. 1 year after Taylor's death, Chris claimed not to recall some of the most critical parts of the crime.
I remember is laying down to go to bed with her. Or not laying down to go to bed, but laying down in bed talking to her. Is the last thing that I consciously remember doing.
You said you remember Taylor getting a knife, you tried to take it away from her, she sliced you or slashed you with it, and you shoved her into a wall before getting the baseball bat.
Correct.
None of that was true.
No.
You made it up.
Correct.
But you did hit Taylor with a baseball bat.
As far as memory goes, yes.
When you hit her with that bat, Taylor was facing away from you?
As far as memory I can construe sorry, I apologize. As far as my memory withstands, yes.
When you told Detective Rowling that you remembered stabbing Taylor, did you remember stabbing Taylor?
At the time, yes.
And you told Detective Rowling you couldn't say why you stabbed her?
Correct.
But you thought maybe it was because Taylor was still moving and you might as well put her out of her misery given how much damage you'd already done to her.
Correct, that was what was said.
In closing arguments, Chris's lead attorney, Miguel Puentes, delivered another odd analogy. He argued that Taylor's 60 wounds weren't the result of 60 separate choices. Instead, he said it was like walking or eating. Sometimes actions flow together in one continuous decision. In this case, murder.
So I just want you to think just an activity. Any activity. Doesn't matter what it is. And the question is like, once you're in it, are you just in it? Like, are you just doing it? Or are you kind of like, are you considering, are you then contemplating and recontemplating every step in that process? We'll treat it like a walk in the park, right? Are you contemplating each step, or did you contemplate the walk and then every step is not being deliberated and is not being premeditated? That is just happening. That is in the action that you're already in. Another example is just eating food, each bite. Are you contemplating each time, or are you just doing it?
Puentes tried to claim the fatal injury likely happened early, in the kitchen, where the attack began. He suggested that Taylor wasn't conscious or moving on her own after that point.
I think the incident happened in the kitchen. I think she died in the kitchen. I think that that's what the evidence supports. I think it happened fast, and again, I think it happened in the kitchen. Now, any offenses that occur after someone is deceased is not murder in the first, murder in the second, voluntary or involuntary. It's just not. You can't form intent after the fact. That is a separate crime and a crime that has not been charged.
Making the rest of the attack irrelevant to intent, but the prosecution fired back. Scott County Assistant Attorney Brett Larson reminded the jury there was no evidence to support that theory. The blood patterns, the struggle across multiple rooms, it all pointed to a prolonged and violent attack. And Chris's own words, said Larson, told the real story when he told detectives that he might have stabbed Taylor to put her out of her misery. That is the defendant telling you he stabbed her to put her out of her misery.
That version of events, that story, that makes sense based on the evidence you've seen in this case. It doesn't. What story does make sense? The story, or what the defendant told Detective Rowling after he came clean and said, oh, the first story, I made all that up. After that point, what the defendant told you was what happened. That story matches up with the physical evidence that we see on scene.
After less than 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returned their verdict.
The jury find the defendant guilty of murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of domestic abuse, assault, with the intent to inflict serious injury. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your service as jurors. I would assume the defense would like the jury polled.
Guilty of first-degree murder. The conviction carries an automatic life sentence with no possibility of parole. Sentencing for Christopher Beehall is scheduled for May 30th, 2025. 2 family members, including Taylor's mother, Lisa, are expected to speak at the hearing, delivering their victim impact statements.
Prayers. I have a lot of support. We have a lot of support in our family. You know, we got family and friends that have been wonderful through this whole thing. And prayer, a lot of prayer.
Taylor Escontrias was a daughter, a friend, a mother of 2. Her story is a tragic reminder of the dangers that can hide behind closed doors and how violence can unfold quietly until it's too late. If you found this case compelling, be sure to subscribe to Serial Shadows for more true crime stories and updates on this case when sentencing is delivered. Thanks for watching.